I am from the communications team at Globalrec, the Global Alliance for Waste Pickers. We represent organizations in over 28 countries, and we're starting a campaign concerning EPR. Our first webinar on this is happening right now, so thank you so much for being here, everyone. So to use interpretation, you have to click on the toolbar here to pick the language you want to listen to. I will ask the interpreters of each language to repeat these instructions in the corresponding languages. We can start with Spanish, please, followed by French, and then we will give start to the event. I think they were interpreting already. So all is good concerning interpretations. We'll give the floor to Jacqueline Flores now. She is the secretary of the organization in Argentina. Hello, good morning. Opa.
Jackie, you can begin your presentation, and then we can go ahead with the event. Good morning, everyone. Today is a special day for all of the waste pickers here in the region in Latin America. So good morning, everybody. This is a webinar, and we have the intention of starting to talk about an important event with Globalrec. We have some important case studies from Brazil, and we're going to tell us about and share the experiences so that we can discuss ERP, the extended responsibility of producers. We think this is a very important issue because we have some experts here who are going to help us to understand it. We have to talk about important things linked to the efforts being made by so many people around the world, by so many waste pickers. We need to have experiences that we can think about, that we can share, and in order to understand what waste pickers need and want. Today, I'm going to be moderating because we're going to be talking about how grassroots waste pickers get involved. There are many people online, and first of all, we're going to listen to Jacqueline Rutkowski. Sorry about the pronunciation. She is a doctor in engineering and works with waste management, and she is a researcher for the Interdisciplinary Institution for Studies on Sustainability. She has conducted a lot of research about waste picking and the economy of solidarity, and has written about inclusive recycling. Today she's going to give us a presentation, so welcome. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I'm going to try to share with you my presentation here. There it is. Can you see it? Is everything good? Let's put it in the correct mode here. Can you see it? Good morning to all. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm seeing a lot of people from all over the world on the chat, a lot of well-known members here as well. It's good to be with them, even though it's just virtually. I'd like to thank Globalrec, give them congratulations for the initiative. To me, this topic is extremely important here. Talking about the waste pickers' responsibility, producers' responsibility, about the cycle of life of the products that end up in the market is going to help us to build a better waste management and help to build actions to prevent climate change. So it's something interesting for the society in general and waste pickers in particular. During the presentation, I will insist on that. I will insist on why I believe this. This comes after research undertaken between 2019-2020 in the UK, financed by the European Union. As Jackie has said, I belong to an NGO in the SUSTENTAR Institute, and we want to research the sustainable use of natural resources. And from 2008, I researched waste management. In 2012, Sustainta was one of those that proposed ORIS, the Observatory of Solidary and Inclusive Recycling. It is a network made out of academics, of technicians, that seeks to promote recycling as an alternative to waste treatment. Ever since its inception, we have tried to answer to the technical supplies that Brazilian waste pickers have to be included in the waste system. I have specialized ever since to study this topic. How can waste pickers can be integrated and not kept outside? Many of the times, some participants believe that waste pickers are actually a problem to the management, but no, that's not true at all. Waste management by waste pickers is great. The integration of waste pickers is good, and I've been trying to prove how this can be done. This is why I'm interested in also studying packaging, the kind of packaging management that has been assigned in 2015. All of what I am introducing is a scheme, and in the first report of the sectorial agreement, they showed that the protagonists here in orange are the ones that participated in the packaging sectorial agreement. It was signed in 2015 between the Ministry for the Environment and an association of companies, more than 20 associations in different sectors, building almost 4,000 companies total. The great news here was that FACCyR was called to be one of the participants. The agreement wanted to reduce in 22% the packaging that ended up in a landfill or in dumps. That is 3,815 tons per day that would be recycled. So the goals would be checked after the marketing data that would be delivered by waste pickers associations. And ANCAT had the role of helping systematize the data. Then the companies would become responsible for passing on resources to the cooperatives extending productivity and capacity of the cooperatives. Thus, with all of this investment, we could think in progressive goals. And on top of that, the companies had to create points of voluntary delivery, that is, places where the citizen can voluntarily take his recyclable waste. Since European countries were the first to discuss this concept, Germany had a law in '94, the European Union wrote a guideline in '98. I chose to choose this European experience as a benchmark to understand what was happening in Brazil. So this diagram can sum up the system in Europe, where waste management is made by the public local powers, as well as Brazil and several countries in Latin America. However, in Europe, the preparation and screening of this material to get recycled is made by private companies. And there exist different control points in relation to the goals. They control what is put on the market in terms of packaging, what is then collected by city halls as segregated materials, and what gets out of the screening companies to be then sent to the industry. In Brazil, we can see that the responsibility of sending the packagings to a dump has been of waste pickers. In this diagram, I'm trying to reproduce a productive chain of recyclable materials coming from several places in Brazil. And what we can see here is that the waste pickers are the chain between two different parts that are absolutely essential to guarantee recycling. They act as collectors of the packaging. So they act in the entire chain here, and they act as the preparers, that is, the people that get the materials ready for the industry. So they are protagonists in the value chain, the chain of the processes that are necessary so that the packaging stops being waste and becomes a recycling product. So based on this statement, the coalition of companies suggested the model proposed by the Sectorial Court. Different producers such as CocaCola, Danone, and others, they're big producers of packagings in Brazil, had voluntarily invested, ever since their national policy was approved in 2010, in this relationship with cooperatives. Many agreements with NGOs and other companies, producers registered the production data of cooperatives, and in exchange, they offered resources to the NGOs so that the NGOs made trained waste picker cooperatives, bought equipment, and other investments within the cooperatives. However, the Sectorial Court first, there was a first national organization that decided that, and it was the first where ANCAT became, as in the National Association of Waste Pickers, became one of the entities to receive resources to realize these investment actions and send them directly to waste pickers. I'm sure that Eddie and my colleagues, especially Roberto, will get into more detail. In my studies, I noticed two very important issues, some issues that I wanted to share with you. Firstly, we can clearly say that this model of reverse logistics is very innovative. We need this waste picker, the acknowledgement that waste pickers are actors in the system. This resource is passed on to cooperatives, and this still represents another benefit. That is, we are partially provisioning or supplying the lack of working capital, which is a problem not only in Brazil, but in many other countries where workers are organized in cooperatives. Because the cooperatives, it is hard for them to access resources in the financial market. Usually they don't have resources to invest. And this money that is being passed on by the producers is supplying this lack of working capital. On top of that, it is offering an appropriate technical aid, especially now that ANCAT is the main intermediate in these resources. It's how we say it here in Brazil. The waste pickers in Brazil say this a lot. When we're talking about from waste picker to waste picker, things are done better. And these resources have helped to boost the legalization of cooperatives. We can have a consultancy concerning regulations of cooperatives, and sometimes it's not that easy. So deep down, this agreement has been helping higher sustainability of waste pickers in Brazil. In terms of circular economy, I also identified something that's quite interesting, because how do waste pickers a part of their income comes from what they market. So to them, it's interesting to collect and process the maximum amount of recyclable material. Several materials are being sent on to recycling in Brazil, no matter the market value. What I observed in Europe is how these selecting companies are private. They can choose the material that have most market value. Practically high density material and polypropylene are sent to be recycled in Europe. The rest of the material, they end up being incinerated or exported towards Asia, China, and other places. Here in Brazil, that's not the case. Another study that I had conducted on the recycling chain shows that we see that we have a plastic chain that is quite well developed. A lot is lacking, but that's another issue. So a third point. The model was implanted independently of the local public power here. In Europe, usually reverse logistics depend on the organization of the operators. And as I said, as I showed in the diagram, it depends on the selective collecting or picking being done by city halls. Here in Brazil, less than 20% of municipalities have selective collecting here that is embedded. So if we waited for the 100%, we would never have this kind of system. The model that is simpler, it is easier to extend and copy. We know that all of this embedded management is a reality in several countries. So it is possible to start picking out of the waste this recyclable packaging, even though your model isn't perfect. Also, the sectorial agreement is giving a registry of the waste pickers' work. The base of this register is the base, actually, of a Brazilian recycling yearbook or annual that was published by Uncut. And even more importantly, The way in which waste pickers work guarantees that a great part of everything that is getting in to reach goals are actually packaging. They are packaging and they count as domestic inputs, which is kind of hard to reach. Also, the agreement has promoted mutual support. Today, the industry gives more information on recyclability. Let's take a traditional case like Danone. After the first agreement with the cooperative network here in Minas Gerais, managed to understand that one of the packaging of one of its products didn't have a market to go to. So today, Global Danone has been working to change this packaging. On the other hand, waste pickers have ended up learning more on recycling. So it is beneficial also under that lens. But of course, there are other cases. And the first is that these resources that are passed on from producers to cooperatives are not included in real costs of the services provided by waste pickers. Actually, it would be interesting for us to have, as in Europe, a set value per ton of recyclable material passed on to waste pickers, considering all the costs that the waste pickers have to do their work, but receiving a remuneration, as is common in commercial relationships. Also, waste pickers should have to have freedom of choice on the product, so the cooperatives could choose what to do with what they're given. Today, these resources are linked to external financing, to investment, and to purchase of materials. There's a second problem. There is no way to expand this system. We can start the system without the participation of the local public power, but there's no way to extend 100% the packaging within the system without involving the local public power, because they are responsible for product management. So it depends on the public power. We need this to extend here picking and guarantee that citizens manage to actually divide their products. There are a lot of packagings that are picked and they're not marketed. So the reverse logistics managers need to discuss this. What do we do with this packaging? Of course, we know that the ideal would be for these packagings like Danone, like the Danone case, the companies need to substitute these packagings for something that is more environmentally friendly. But in practice, the packaging does exist, and there's a waste picking cost to treating this packaging. This also was not discussed in the agreement. And finally, it becomes very clear for me that if there isn't very strict control on the part of the public power, such as exists in Europe, it is very hard for the system to get extended. So we need to know exactly the quantities of packaging that are put on the market, what was indeed picked separately, what was sent toward recycling effectively. Today, this is the best part of our reverse logistics. We know exactly what was sent to recycling, but we do not control other kinds of products. And it is necessary for the government to discuss, is this paid value fair? And especially reverse logistics, or the ERP, is an environmental policy. So we need to think that the created residue will also increase. So to conclude, I'd like to leave a small suggestion from the study that I published in an article at the Detritos journal. a European journal, in which I try to open the discussion. What could be an interesting model toward a waste management that is sustainable concerning ERP? What do I think? I think we should have a system that is financed by what is paid by consumers, because consumers can also be considered within the polluter and payer chain. And the industry would help to finance, with the taxes it would pay, a part of the waste management, as well as part of the waste pickers' work in terms of preparing the materials to pass them on to recycling. The government could control audits, for instance, such as happened in Germany. And it would be interesting for the waste pickers to strengthen a strategy that already exists in Brazil, to create marketing centrals, join several cooperative associations to market the different materials all together, so they gain more force, more strength, to have more weight in the value chain. These are some insights that I would suggest after my research, and I wanted to share with you. So this was me. I hope I collaborated to all your thoughts. I am available for different doubts or questions and for the debate we will have later. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, Jackie, your presentation was really interesting. And of course, it's related to the fact that we're valuing more and more the visibility of our work. I'm going to introduce a colleague now, who it's a pleasure to see. It's Roberto Eliano, who's a waste picker who used to collect recyclable materials in Sao Paulo in the 80s. Now he works with Kruma, a recycling cooperative, United for the Environment, and he's also the director of ANCAT. He's also the founder and the leader of a social national movement of waste pickers, whose objective is to organize Brazilian waste pickers and to fight for the recognition of waste pickers as essential actors in recycling and waste management. It's a pleasure to have you here, and go ahead whenever you want.
Obrigado, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Good
Hello.
morning, good afternoon.
Hello,
everyone.
everybody.
I would like to say hello to Alianza Global de
I wanted
Catadores. I would like to say hello to all our
Say
colleagues,
congratulations to all the waste pickers here and to the Global Alliance of Waste
pickers,
Pickers.
supporters, partners, and sponsors believing in our fight of waste pickers for recyclable material. And an event like this that brings the visibility of everyone who's so important, from not just picking up packages, and sometimes it's not recognized, sometimes it's not seen as it was supposed to be seen, in the way it's done, in the work they do, the structure they have. So as I've mentioned, I'm Roberto. I'm a waste picker from recyclable material, and today I'm on a specific task acting on CAT, which is the National Association of Waste Picker, which is the technical support to the national movement. I'm one of the founders of the national movement of Catadores, and I'm on that fight, a war fight, which is quite big, for having dignity and for people to recognize our work. We can go to the next slide, if you please. To get there, and so you see our trajectory. I would like to talk about everything. I would like to make a bit of a summary of all our work to get where we are today. In 1999, we have the first meeting of paper waste speaker, because at the time they would call us paper waste speaker. In 2000, we had the National Congress of Waste Speaker, which was a big one with representation from all over Brazil, from waste speaker, to have a debate about the role and history of our role as waste speaker. In 2010, there was a big fight in Brazil in that period from 2000 to 2010. There was a lot of landfills that were open and living over there. So we had a huge debate, and it was really important work which we did for the bank fill, and at the end, and having no kids within the garbage, and for people to respect our category of waste picker for recyclable material. In 2015, there was a big move forward, fighting against incineration, and we're still fighting that and implementing the national program of So there was a national program, the national program of popular recycling, and we got training, we got organization from all over Brazil. From that moment onwards, we started making the necessary connection of waste speaker at the national level, from committees, from associations, from waste speakers from different modes, until having an organic and stronger structure of the national movement of waste speaker, that after today, that movement maintained the program within the training, within all the qualification. In 2020, 2021, the fight to recognize how essential this work is. So in that period of 2020 to 21, our fight was regarding people recognizing that our service was key in municipalities and reverse logistics and the recycling chain. So our insertion as main actors, because, sorry about that, because during this period, the pandemic period, the industry, the recycling industry got a shortage with a small amount of recycling materials that would reach them, because we waste speaker, the base, were not receiving, were not collecting the material. That's proved the importance, and and with that result, we saw how important it was, and we were recognized, and we were even more integrated in the recycling chain. Next slide. Within our steps, we have the recognitions for our work on recyclable material, and now the waste speaker is recognized by the work ministry, and it's a profession like any other profession. It's officially recognized. We had an interministerial committee creation where ministries were meet from the federal government until 2008, 2010, if I'm not mistaken. We had that interministry committee. Unfortunately, that ministry does not longer exist. That committee does no longer exist. With the ministries, the President of the Republic will meet to deal with important aspects and with aspects of public policies for waste speakers of recyclable materials throughout Brazil. We had a decree of implementing of solitary selective picking, which is still maintains, and this decree compels public sectors at the federal level to give the recyclable materials to the waste pickers. And then in 2007, we had a law that guarantees that waste pickers can be hired by municipalities without going through a bidding process. So waste picker may be hired directly by municipalities. Next slide, if you please. In 2010, we had the National Policy of Solid Residue, which is a really important one of the few policies that talk about waste pickers as main actors in solid residue management. Within that period and within that national policy, we also have shared responsibility in something that is important that we talk about with society, with government, and with everyone who's responsible for the link of the recycling chain. We had a decree of the restructuring of SISC waste pickers that I've just mentioned. And also, we consider cooperatives, service providers handling residues. That decree of 7,217, national decree that would consider cooperatives as main actors in handling residue. Next slide. Within all that process, we were very much focused on organizing our work as waste pickers, and we had the privilege for the first time, and this was a historic occasion, to be called to manage recyclable collection during the World Cup in Brazil in 2014. It was the first time where officially we were called, and we actually negotiated officially with the private initiative in order to pick up the packaging and provide the right destination. In 2014, we had that work, and all the cities where the World Cup happened, a number of cooperatives coordinated by ANCAT, which is the National Association of Waste Pickers. Through a process, we did all this, and that was a very important moment for all waste pickers in Brazil. In 2015, we had our participation on discussing and signing a sector agreement for packages. As Jacqueline mentioned, that sector agreement for packaging is the one which provided the tone for investment from private investment related to packaging, which are co-responsible and to support waste picker. So ANCAT is the National Association, and it was in agreement with that national agreement, and even had some inspections on the investment to strengthen programs in Brazil. ANCAT had a program which is to recycle for Brazil, which is a program we're going to talk about now. Edge was our project manager, executive manager, and he's going to talk about recycling for Brazil, Reciclar pelo Brasil. It's an ANCAT program in Brazil which operates reverse logistics. There are a number of programs in Brazil, not just from ANCAT, but from other who have reverse logistic programs, and all of them are connected to strengthening the waste picker base. ANCAT, with that challenge, with Recycling for Brazil had to perform quite a restructuring without a challenge of talking, opening a dialogue with private initiative and with other huge actors, the big ones, package manufacturers, and huge brands which are on the market. And ANCAT has now a relationship, a contract, a service agreement that supports waste picker in those activities. So we had to do a whole restructuring because it would not be enough just to be called as waste pickers or to be an organization of waste pickers. We had to have an organization that was able to handle competencies or conformities from our partner. So from that moment onwards, ANCAT built a whole network, a whole structural organization with consulting, with a strategic consulting and support, with financial management, communication manager, administration manager, a project manager, on audits. They have a legal consultant, a legal department, a company compliance from the institution. They have a legal analysis areas to analyze all contracts and to see if all contracts are in agreement with what is being executed. And we also have a section for projects that manages a number of projects, among which Recycling for Brazil, which aims directly to reverse logistics. Within that Recycling for Brazil, we have the technological monitoring. We have two tools for monitoring for all packages going through the waste picker hands, Recycla Eco and Merle. And we had an investment process. This is an area that just handles investment in that sense. And we have a executive secretary with a direct relationship with all those industries, Ed, who's going to be presenting on the more technical side, Recycling for Brazil, Reciclar pelo Brazil. We have activities, we have productions, we have field teams and ANCAT in Brazil with Reciclar pelo Brazil, as we are a waste pickers organization managed by waste pickers. We have in the whole of Brazil, mobilizing waste pickers is the only reverse logistics programs that have in Brazil waste pickers working on field tasks, both for technical support and structural support for waste pickers. So this is something that even having all that technical support, ANCAT will always maintain its key, its essence, which is waste picker is a professional, and waste picker always talk to waste picker. So all our organizations, we have a technical team, and then we have waste pickers to be able to talk to them and to help them in their organizations. So our methods and goals, ANCAT works to have administrative and financial management, operational and production management, human resources management, relations, excited relationship and partnerships, infrastructure and keeping its objectives to incentivize professionalization, to encourage professionalization. So waste pickers are more and more professional and self-managed, so they can expand their work links to the point of providing a service as reverse logistics. So they can actually provide that service. They can encourage the association process. They can strengthen the self-management from waste pickers. They want to improve the infrastructure, because if there's an improvement in infrastructure, without an improvement in infrastructure, this makes no sense to increase the amount of material. We have to enlarge recycling and picking and the amount of packages recovered by organizations. and to enlarge and to contribute working, because we cannot forget the strengthening as well and increasing awareness on environmental education. Next slide, please. And these are our results. ANCAT works with over 443 organizations in a number of projects further to the Reciclar pelo Brazil. We have other actions, other projects, even solidarity actions, work and during the pandemics a lot to support waste pickers who had no income. ANCAT had a really important job during the pandemic. We are in 229 cities, 23 states, 5 regions from the country. There are over 70,000 waste pickers involved in a process, and a real result through the process with traceability, because we have traceability of where its material came from, what waste picker, of over 465,000 tons of recovered material from 2015 to 2020. And that's it. Remain here, ANCAT, the National Association of Waste Pickers. We are at your disposal. And as a matter of fact, we have the support of the Global Alliance of Waste Pickers to strengthen our categories of waste pickers. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. It really is important to support recyclers in Brazil. Now we're going to move on to Eddie, sorry. Eddie Merendino, a master in clinical engineering from Nancy, France. He worked as an environmental development worker in Tetra Pak, which is a Swedish company who work with the recycling of packaging. He also worked in Latin America, Africa, and Brazil, and he works with the management of solid waste in Brazil. He is currently the executive secretary of the platform Recycling for Brazil, one of the most important EPR projects in Brazil. So take the mic. Thank you, Jackie.
Hello, everyone, and thank
you
you for your presentation. So we're going to
watching.
continue a bit on that talk, on that presentation, adding everything we have.
So I agree with everything that
Roberto
Jackie and Roberto said.
So we're going to talk about the Recycling for Brazil platform, and bearing in mind the context of national product policy. I believe the big difference on the responsibility model from the European level that we had for some time, for the model we built here in Brazil, there's a difference in names. So in Brazil, we don't have an extended program from the producer. We have a shared responsibility program, and that was talked about extensively in Brazilian national policy. So today we can show the result from that shared program, shared responsibility program. Why shared? Because as Jacqueline mentioned, we in Brazil historically have the waste pickers work in that link of reverse logistics and recycling. And here it needs to be a structure, it needs to be strengthened, because it's necessary and it makes part of the process. And it could be exercised on the national policy. So the private sector investing in that, in those waste pickers, strengthen the link so waste pickers can do that. So believing in that model that was always led by the packaging coalition to have that sector agreement, and that also talks about a shared responsibility, not only for the private sector, but also for the public sector. So with selective picking and to invest in environmental education programs, to invest in hiring cooperatives to provide services in the cities. So within the structuring of the private sector, with the support of the public sector, that's what we should have, that we should have the goals regarding recycling. With all of that, at the end of the day, the ones paying the bill are in the private sector a lot more than the other sectors that are part of the national policy. We show results, we structure programs with that idea. So recycling in Brazil, it's a good example in that along those lines, we have those programs, individual programs, like CocaCola and like Ambev in 2016, and they decide that they are no longer going to have individual projects for recycling, but they want to have a united project to gain a scale, responsibility, and traction throughout the country. In order to do that, they help to structure the best part for that project, which is ANCAT, which is a technical association to support waste pickers. And this is part of the structuring investment from the group. So qualified ANCAT, organizing and articulating that, we start recycling for Brazil. So Coca-Cola and Ambev in 2017 formed that alliance, formed ANCAT to participate in that project. So the participant of the platform back then were Coca-Cola, ANCAT, and Ambev. The project is successful, sounds to be viable, and started spreading and gaining new funds. And the second stage, where we already have another big company, which is Nestlé, because they also believe that investing in the base, investing in cooperatives, investing on the structure, investing on organization is what should happen. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're achieving. How the shared responsibility part from the private sector can transform actions and can transform waste picker actions, whether they're from cooperatives or the main characters of the actions, which are a structure like with ANCAT. So looking for efficiency in applying resources, looking that it's spread out throughout the country, and governance for an efficient way, we built this platform of recycling for Brazil in 2017. It started with Coca-Cola and Ambev, and now we have here 19 participants with Coca-Cola, Ambev, ANCAT, and also Nestlé, DPA, WIEGO, Dodo, Octer, BRF, Tetra Pak, Ajinomoto, PepsiCo, Arco, GDE, Cargill, Danone, Braskem, Abi Brazil, do Coco. So all of these are companies, 13 companies believing in that ability of waste pickers to be the main actors for collecting and recycling materials, for them to be the actors and being the main people to talk and to see the investment which is necessary of companies for their responsibility, and they can invest, and this investment means that there is more equipment, there's more safety, there's more assistance in a crisis moment like the one health crisis like the one we lived lately. So this proves how that shared responsibility model works, is powerful, and can be applied to other places. We just need to coordinate all these factors and points. If there's the need of larger investments, if there's the need for better structuring, then everyone have to provide their part of responsibility within the shared responsibilities so that would happen. So at least the private sector, and with all these companies that support the Reciclar pelo Brasil platform, has proved within their part of responsibility. Today, we're in the fifth stage for regarding action. We got to 23 states on the previous stage, and we are going to reach, our goal is to reach all 27 Brazilian states. So here we have a number of questions on the chart saying that projects don't get all the way to the interior of the country. So we are trying to have that happening. It's more expensive, it's more difficult, but we are in the interior of the country. We're going to the capitals. And last year we got to 132 cities within the country, supporting over 221 cooperatives of waste pickers, which means over 4,500 waste pickers supported within all those organizations. So here it shows that the joint action of restructuring of an actor for the organization and then the responsibility for its different financial company, more than finance and participating in the decision, the platform is not about ANCAT, it's not about CocaCola, it's not about it, it's about the whole group. And the group decides where we're going to, and the execution is ANCAT's responsibility to execute that in the best possible way to show that there's the competence to show what has happened and to show that there's legitimacy to deal that and to provide the results we are.
All of these are very cool and interesting principles throughout these 4 years of work. Well, we have seen the ANCAT's work joined to the work of the co-ops invite a diagnostic of every co-op that's going to belong to this program. Here we evaluate all the legal and regularization, several managements, operational, administrative, people management are analyzed to project a plan to show the evolution of the co-op in these 7 axes, show the increase in income, the increase in all the material collected by the co-ops. Here we have a mirror of all the increases throughout all the phases. We are looking really for the co-op to improve in any of the 7 axes, in several of the 7 axes, so that we can actually strengthen all of these sectors and players so that every time they have a more powerful voice, more power to negotiate contracts within city halls and municipalities. We have quite a lot of cooperatives that belong to the platform that have this condition, as Jacqueline said, to really get a better income for the service provided. This has been happening, is happening. The support exists, the investment exists on the part of program like Recicladores pelo Brasil, structuring programs that are under the umbrella of the sectorial agreement, under the shared responsibility that we have been doing here in Brazil. So for you to get a picture, last year, Roberto did say this, usually platform investments are very focused on infrastructure. So shed reformulation, for instance, or bathrooms, investment in vehicles for collecting waste and equipment. Basically, normal investment were made in this point. But last year, the start of the COVID-19 pandemic pushed for necessary action, especially in Brazil in March, April, May. Many co-ops shut down. Many workers saw that the recyclable material price hit a historical low. So in that moment, ANCAT and company sensibilities joined to be able to discuss actions. So we managed to get 66% of the investment to become income for the worker at that critical moment. So they managed to help the cooperative throughout this very harsh moment instead of investing it in structure. So in that specific moment, that was the most important. And we were only able to get that because we had ANCAT's very sensitive gaze to work within the cooperatives, to work with the technicians. And for ANCAT to be able to run that, it has an amazing team of technicians that is next to the cooperatives holding their hands, and a group of companies that understands and values these actions to decide to change the way of the platform to act, to be able to help these people at that particular moment. We did that in that year. We are happy to say that the co-ops still exist. They continue to operate. And today's investments are invested, let's say, to help them and extend their income volume and help their structure. This shows how the integration of ANCAT and waste pickers with the private system has a very strong synergy. And when it's well organized, it works, and it works very well. It keeps all the features, all the ideology, and the essence of what waste pickers movement really is. However, answering to the private sector as it needs to respond to legal demands and shared responsibility demands. So the example of the platform, Reciclar pelo Brasil, in this aspect is unique because other projects do exist, that is true, but they are not run, they don't have the waste pickers on the decision board in this projects. This is why the Reciclar pelo Valor platform has this added value for all those who participate, for all those that can access it. So the value is huge. It has been built by the waste pickers, by the companies that believe, sponsor, and participate in this platform for us to reach these results and these actions. And with this, we managed to act and meet all the demands, be it with vehicles or equipment reform or physical space restructuring here, so we can deliver results here. 397,000 tons here. We have the sales that represent over 206 million reais in these last few years. At every stage here, last year, look at what we reached with the pandemic and all the problems. We went over 100,000 tons of recycling material. We surpassed all of this. We are expecting all of those tons in 2021, and the bigger the volume is, the more we can add in terms of investment, the more people we can include in the platform, and the more waste pickers we manage to support. So in a way, we managed to impact people. This shows that truly we follow the income and we follow the lives of the waste pickers and all they've been through. The last year we had a sharp drop, especially at the beginning of the year, but we managed to surpass it and recover it, and the results have really been good. Okay, so I think we're gonna have some questions right now, but a main message is that this sector is called compliance, but within what is shared responsibility of the several players within this sector, they do have their share of responsibility and they don't try to escape it, but we need to do it thinking on the long term, considering all the work history of the waste pickers so that it is not destroyed or forgotten. As private operators that run rep programs, as in the case of Europe, we want to do this with waste pickers, but with a longer term edge and integrating it in a collective manner so that we are able to show all the changes that we have been implementing. This is where I end my presentation. And I think now it's the time for a Q&A on concerning the three presentations. Thank you very much.
Bueno, la verdad que espero que de verdad lo estén disfrutando, entretenido, es real. La tecnología está haciendo que me lleguen las preguntas traducidas y la verdad que aprovechando a ordenar, queríamos también, digamos, mencionar que este webinario tiene que ver con
I also
algunos
wanted to mention that this webinar is going to be linked to some other ones that we're going to do in the future, because it's true that I'm receiving lots of questions and we do need to think about what we really need, what recyclers and waste pickers really need and what we want. So I think that's a reflection that we need to have. So in the next webinar, we're going to talk about Argentina's experience and the United States. I think that's really important to talk about. I do want to invite you to come. There's a lot of things that we need to reflect on in order to literally achieve something specific. We need to do what Roberto says and to move forward and respect the work of waste pickers and recyclers that we've been promoting for years. We've been promoting recycling systems around the world for years. So I'm being told that there are many questions, and that's something really positive because it means that people are reflecting. So first of all, for Jackie, it says, "Dear Jackie, the Brazilian model doesn't take on the issues of packaging that aren't good for recycling. That is, in Europe, packaging are not harder to recycle for higher prices. And that creates a market price, a market system that improves the performance of packaging. How do you think that Brazil could move forward with this kind of stimulus for the environmental performance of packaging?"
Thank you so much for the question. I also sent the question through the chat because it's a long one. Thank you so much for the question. It is a paramount issue that you have brought up. I briefly mentioned it in my presentation. In the case of several packagings today that actually reach the sheds or the hangars and that have no market, I believe ERP has to help solve this problem, right? At first, maybe giving responsibility for the producers that need to foot the bill for all of this waste. And as I said in my presentation, there is a cost not only for the waste pickers. The waste pickers do collect and separate the waste, and then this material isn't really counted as income because it cannot be sold, but it is a cost of sending it to the landfill, for instance. And it's a very high environmental cost. This needs to be put on the table to be discussed. But I believe it is a question that works on several levels. If we give it a sharper look, even in Europe, as I said, over 30 years of ERP have been established, there are still issues lingering within the policies that do not totally guarantee an environmental bias of the ERP. So it's a global discussion to be had. I usually say that it's more or less a fight with ropes, a rope of war, shall we say. We need to discuss how we preserve the environment, as the waste is a big problem in there. And of course, the huge corporations, producers want to reduce production costs, obviously. We see that everywhere, not only in terms of packaging, really. I think that in Brazil's case, we need to put that on the table. Unfortunately, today, our Ministry for the Environment isn't really a fan of talking about the environment. We need to advance, but I think it's a point that needs to be in the ERP discussion, no doubt. Anyway, I think we need to not think of policies as if they are antagonists. We are starting a process that, from my point of view, is more positive than negative. But several other issues exist that we still need to advance on. This is one of them. If you'll allow me, Jacqueline, the national policy does contemplate this issue, and the sectorial agreement also has issues related to packaging and to the recycling chain of packaging. I think it is a construction process. It needs to be built. So for example, within the sectorial agreement, we have a very sharp bias looking towards recovery. Except today, it is not as pushed on as picking. We still have a lot to pick though. The sector needs to grow a fair bit. We need public policies towards selective picking because we lack a greater support. Here we're talking about 19 big companies. They're big, yeah, they're huge, but the responsibility on the material belongs to all the companies. There's still a lot of people that need to start participating and helping so that this truly happens. So it's a shared responsibility, as I said. The responsibility does exist, and people need to charge it. They need to really ask it of each and every one of us. We need a better running of those mechanisms to be able to get to this point. We are going to face some dilemmas, won't we? I mean, it's the dilemma between having a packaging that will get to a certain point compared to the level of recyclability within the recycling market. So it really is a packaging dilemma all in itself. What's good is that many companies are paying attention to this. So within the platform, we can cite a few initiatives to take out packaging made out of several materials. There's some examples of some initiatives that we are trying to bring within the platform. So to get through this line, walk this path, this is necessary for the future. Good.
Eso está muy bueno. Acá voy a leer dos preguntas para Roberto. La primera es de CoOps, Cuatis, puede ser, espero haberlo dicho bien. Pregunta para Roberto, dice, ¿cómo conseguir el apoyo del gobierno municipal, dada la falta de apoyo del municipio y de las empresas locales? Y la próxima es, desde ANCAT, dado que muchos recicladores brasileños son informales, no aparecen en las estadísticas, ¿cómo
Many
trabaja?
Brazilian waste pickers don't appear in statistics. So how does ANCAT work with independent waste pickers and how do they associate them? Is there an organizational niche in this sense?
Bacana. Agradeço aí
Cool.
pela pergunta aí.
Thanks for the question. I also put them on the chat in case you need a reminder. Thank you.
Primeira aí, né?
Okay, let's answer the first question.
Quem me perguntou a primeira da onde que é? Desculpa.
Who asked the first question? I'm sorry, I didn't really get that. Quachi from Rio de Janeiro. Ah, Rio de Janeiro. Okay,
Obrigado.
good.
Bom,
Thanks,
vamos lá.
Eddie.
Então,
Okay, let's go.
primeiro, na verdade,
Firstly, actually,
mobilizar, né?
we need to mobilize and seek public policies within the municipality or next to it. There are several actions in Rio de Janeiro itself, coming from different waste picking actions happening in Rio de Janeiro that need to have strength, gather strength to go talk to City Hall to guarantee public policies, because there is a national waste policy which guaranteed the participation of waste pickers in waste management. I believe it needs to go through two processes: mobilization, our mobilization as waste pickers, with movements in which we can participate, waste picker movements or any other kind of movement that may exist in the state that can mobilize to face whatever is needed. And the other action, truly, is seek out public policies if they exist. If they don't, how do they work? And also research or ask our partners. There are a lot of prosecutors that work with waste pickers and also public defenders that work with waste pickers to help them within municipalities. These are our intervention tools within the public power. There's also a question, given the lack here of support from local companies. Well, there are programs that exist, programs that can support. That's why I said during my presentation that it is important for us to understand that we can't just be pickers. It's already a profession, right? But we need to get organized at waste pickers. Otherwise, we'll never manage anything. We can just, we'll just keep insisting, but in the end, it's useless, because when we seek our rights, then we don't have documents or organizations. So we really need to get organized. We are professionals. We are recycling waste pickers. What do we need? We need a statute, documents, working spaces. We need to have stuff to advance. Otherwise, we can't. Once that's done, look within private initiative and other players, say, look, I'm organized. Now I want to belong, and I need to belong. Today, for instance, ANCAT, with this program that we have, FACCyR pelo Brasil, all the cooperatives need to invoice, really. If we don't have an invoice, they cannot participate in programs if we cannot issue invoices. So ANCAT's going to support these issuing of invoices. But yeah, we need to say, listen, we need to get a little bit more regulated to issue commercial invoices. ANCAT has been working with a program of working capital, a working capital program, to join up independent waste pickers to waste picking organizations. The format of independent workers is different than organized workers. They act differently. I have been an independent worker and I know how it is. So we are working so that co-ops may add independent workers in a process of joint marketing, so they pay these workers quicker. Usually they take 15 to 30 days to receive their money. So we pay these independent workers immediately, and they can participate, they can share in all the benefits of the co-ops, meetings, the entire process. Even if the co-op doesn't really obtain any kind of benefit, they will pay them. On the other hand, I think there's a struggle to be had. That's our role. We have unicatadores and Movimento Nacional dos Catadores. These are two branches here that also support workers. So there's the issue of a public policy for waste pickers, the same as in Bogota in Colombia. In Colombia, we have a very interesting policy for independent pickers that incentives and boosts the workers to get associated to then strengthen the whole process. They receive a subsidy for this. We see that it's important to advance within a public policy for independent pickers, and that's what the Unicatadores and ANCAT are supporting in this process. That was it.
Very good. Now, Hannah has a question for everyone. She says, generally, our recycling chain ends up damaging more cities in the south and southeast because of the proximity of recycling industries. How do you think we can overcome this challenge? This is a question for all three of you. Who wants to start?
I can start. This is true. Not only for recycling, Brazilian industry is more concentrated in the south and the southeast. It isn't a feature of the recycling market, it's a feature of our country, truly. The development of Northeast, North is important not only for recycling, but also for the country to be more equal in this point. What the platform showcases is that Brazil comes from this policy, and we want to have a national coalition. We start by the south, the southeast, the 17 states in the first phase, and today we are starting to reach, if everything goes well this year, all the states in Brazil. So we will really get these remote areas. The challenges are bigger. We know that the prices of the material are cheaper. This is why the support of initiatives such as the platform are so important, because if we improve the structuring of the co-ops, or maybe making them get organized in sales chains, eliminating intermediaries that only reduce the value received by the workers, are ways in which we can improve the situation. Truly route and develop picking in remote places like the north or the central west. Okay, so I'm going to just complete your answer here. In fact, it is a reality in Brazil. One of the studies that we conducted with the SUSTENTAR Institute concerned that we saw the inequality. There's a sharp concentration of the recycling industry in the developed areas. I think that two issues are very important here to change this reality. The first is that we need to discuss together a recycling incentive policy in Brazil. This discussion doesn't really exist within the environment or the industry. So we are losing points here because all countries do discuss circular economy and the importance of waste becoming resources, especially for us. We're an exporting country. We export natural resources, and we must try to use our waste instead of burning our forest and creating bumps in the Amazon, really. So we need to talk about recycling as an industrial policy and a developmental policy. This is why we need a series of governmental policies and that are structured. It's not only about taxes, really. Brazil wants to reduce taxes on recycling, but that's just a tiny part of the entire discussion. But there's no doubt that reverse logistics, as you pointed out yourself, if it reaches the 27 states in Brazil, it's going to start to increase the recycling supply today in the 27 states of Brazil. So with a bigger supply, probably the industry and the recycling sector will mobilize as well to organize the 27 Brazilian states. And then we start to have a structured production chain. And surely this could make us have a huge recycling industrial park, industrial complex. But this is a very important issue that we truly do need to have at the level of the country.
I believe, I'm talking about what you're saying, I see that we waste pickers, we are actually providing a bit of a context. We're going through a moment, an odd moment of that process of picking packages, because the more package packaging has been institutionalized from the legal point of view, the importance of that picking, that becomes a market. And by becoming a market, a lot of people compete even on an unfair way with our recycling waste pickers, recycling material waste pickers. So I see that we need our waste pickers within that circular economy process that is coming up now, that thing about other terms that actually bring a process which is more connected to the packaging business, from recycling packages, pick up. We waste pickers have to pay a lot of attention, and that's in the whole world. And the more they talk about plastics and the more they talk about multinational companies on their responsibility and their commitment regarding picking up their packages throughout the world, that brings a very strong business view, which if we waste pickers are not organized, are not prepared, we don't have public policies that can are more that can favor the work of recyclable material waste pickers, we can never be hostages from that process that is appearing. So it's a bit out of the box of what the question was, but I believe what we need is to pay a lot of attention, not just, and I believe it's important, I believe that claim is important, I believe it's important to fight for our rights, but we waste pickers need to strengthen from the organization point of view, from the business organization point of view, from the recyclable material, because if we are not organized in that process, then we are going to stay behind. And others are going to assume that. That's why there should be even a technical team, a task force acting on the programs, even in Brazil, because if we are not having that, then UNCAT will not be operating. It's not UNCAT as they mentioned initially, that has a technical performance regarding the business that take care of expectations from that market.
Eddie, vas a intervenir.
That's all.
I think someone else was going to intervene.
I believe we can have one more because
I
I
think
think
Sonia
Sonia
wrote to
wrote
Eddie in
him
the chat, so maybe
in
we can
the
go ahead with that
chat.
question. Yeah,
Jackie
John?
says that she doesn't have the question. You
you're
are muted,
silenced,
Jackie.
Jackie.
I don't have it
It's
translated,
not
but if you can
translated,
read
but if you
it,
can
that would
read
be
it, that would be
great.
great.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Edgy.
Yeah, just Sonia
Sonia
asked,
asked,
how
how is the industry
can the
positioning itself
industry
regarding incineration?
be exonerated?
Okay, so first,
Okay, so
incineration
first,
of recyclable
the
material
incineration of recyclable materials that can be
that can be
separated.
segregated. We are totally against those initiatives. And it makes sense. And you have to encourage first non-generation, there's reduction, then recycling, and then any other kind of proper handling of the materials. So to use the excuse of urban waste being a recyclable material that can be a source of energy, that's totally opposite. That's not part of the policy we have placed. But there are materials, there are rejects from the cooperatives that maybe recover from the energy point of view. These materials have that energy potential, and that could be part of a study or initiative in that sense, but not sending good, valuable material which can be used for waste pickers to survive. So it cannot be used for that. Yeah, that's it. I would like to, I agree with what Eddie said. We are totally against those incineration process and working, as Jacqueline mentioned on her presentation, improvements for some packages that have no recyclability potential. So that's an important point. That's a yellow signal that needs to be observed, that we need to have packages with a recyclability potential, because today we pick up a lot of material that are stopped in our organizations because they have no recyclability potential. So our role as a waste picker organization and as organization is to encourage dialogue with the manufacturing industry to be able to think about designs and products that have a recyclability potential. So we don't have rejects, and that rejects to have the potentiality to go to an oven to be incinerated. To develop technologies of chemical recycling of packages to return those packages as raw material. That's the principle of a circular economy, and that's the idea of most companies. So to work on those things and to work in that area and developing of cooperatives in that regard, it's important because there's no process that doesn't go through a cooperative of waste pickers. It would be something that is not well considered to support a selective pickup and development of cooperatives and selective picking. That has to be encouraged and has to be placed with other alternatives. Once that's done, that's placed, what else can we do in that sense? I believe that's the way. And just to underline, Eddie, I think is great. If you talk about investment, if we today we were taking those resources that are available on the ANCAT program in order to continue strengthening the strength of waste picking organization. They have idea of circular economy. It would be something a lot more positive that one it's been proposed today, which clearly is for the implementation of mechanized center, which is more than proof that is not the best solution for urban waste according to the features it has. And further to that, it goes against everything countries which developed more in the world have done. Currently, Europe, and probably you've noticed the diagram I show you, the European model, until 2018, companies manufacturing material could provide suppliers data of the material they were directing to incineration for energy production as a percentage of packages, but no longer, because Europe has a directive based on circular economy saying that energy recovery is not circular economy, it's not environmentally friendly. And today, regarding climate change, they are more and more encouraging incineration. And today we have a very strong lobby, probably of those companies that are very well implemented in the market in Europe and the US, trying to implement the all non-operative plans here in Brazil. But we, as a society, we need to react clearly against those anti-environmental policies that are trying to be set here. And that's regarding SARE responsibility that has not been done. The first step encourages the selective culture. We have a lot of material going to the dumps which could be easily taken advantage of. Metal, paper, and many other, and is not going there because of lack of investment from municipalities, lack of investment. Sometimes it's not just the municipality, but the resources doesn't come from the state or the federal government, and those city halls cannot handle that properly. So that's the part of shared responsibility which is not happening yet, which is not working, which is not stuck in with the other parts of the project and was not collected in that same point that all other work was paid for. So I totally agree with that. We have to encourage a pay cap, discrimination, and there's a lot of good material to have dryers and to reinsert back in the market. And a lot of waste speakers and a lot of job positions which could be created quite a decent way. I totally agree with that, says Edgy.
En principio, Internet nos estaría así como
Okay, so
dando una mala pasada, pero bueno, la realidad es que
the
bastante
truth
interesante
is that it's quite interesting
que podamos discutir desde
to
todos
be able to speak
los actores involucrados
about all the different
la
actors
responsabilidad
involved and their relation to extended responsibility of producers and how that links up with the work of recyclers
La verdad que después le quería preguntar a Edu por el
and
formato,
companies. I wanted to ask Edu for the
el webinar
format
no nos permite ver,
of,
creo, por lo que
because
veo,
the webinar doesn't
muchas
allow us to
preguntas, espero que
see
nos pueda
some things.
ahí contar. Creo que
I guess there are
sería
lots of
importante
questions,
para cambiar
but I think it is
la
essential
realidad de nuestro
that
sector nos
to
tenemos que
change our the
sabe
reality we live in,
lo comunicamos, lo decimos, lo
we need to
expresamos.
communicate and talk about it. So in Globalrec, we have a, a very important mandate, which is to think about the future and to think about how we can recognize the work of waste pickers around the world. We know there are many colleagues who are not organized, and when we talk about public policy, we must learn once and for all that that public policy is trying to represent a sector, but they cannot speak for them. And this has been happening not only recently. We have many important things to say.
I believe Jackie froze. I don't know if she's froze for you as well. And yes, she is. So I'm going to mute her, and then whenever she has a better internet, she'll get back. So as Jackie mentioned, somos quase 100 pessoas hoje. We had more than 60 questions here in the chat. So I would like to thank a lot everyone who participated in this first webinar. This is the first of a series of 4 webinars that we are going to have on EIP. We're going to talk about the Indian case, Argentina, the US, and many others. The Global Alliance of Waste Picker is having an international campaign to talk about the extended responsibility from producers and to bring that to make tools available for organizations of waste pickers to be able to have a place at the table, to be able to talk about and to be taken into consideration. I would also like to say that the recording of the webinar is going to be available on our social media. We're going to communicate through email in French, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. So again, I would like to thank you all for being here. Another one we will have by the end of September. We're going to invite you. Communication is happening on quite a rich way. It's happening in allowing everyone to be able to talk, especially waste speakers, they can bring their own experience. So again, in the name of Global Hack, thank you. All questions we were not able to answer now, because there's a lot of them, as we mentioned, over 60. I'm going to try to talk with the speakers so they can answer most of them. Probably there's some repeated one, and there are going to be a number of answers on our social media, also in writing or with audio, so everyone has answers. Okay, so thank you all. I'm going to give the floor again to Jackie so she can close, because I believe she's back. Jackie?
comprometiéndonos hace muchos años. No sé, ¿se me escucha?
Can you hear me? Yeah, we can hear you.
Le estaba diciendo que estoy
I was just saying that I'm really grateful because it's clear that we've been committed for many years, and it's a great pleasure to use this energy to link up with all our grassroots colleagues. And it's completely linked to this message that is caring for our common space requires the recognition of the individual workers. We are essential workers. We need to recognize our profession, and there is nothing that makes us happier than being seen as workers who participate in society. And it's true that decisions cannot be made by the sectors if we aren't involved in making that decision. Public policy changes our lives and we need to participate in it. So I'm extremely happy. I hope I contributed to this event. I leave feeling enriched, and let's not forget to keep committed. I'm convinced that there is no tool more powerful than organization. There's nothing more powerful.
Só para finalizar mesmo agora, eu só quero compartilhar com vocês.
To finish, I would just like to share with you, we are launching a new website just for ERP. It's a Globalrec site, and we are preparing that site, which is translated to English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. We're going to share a video which we created explaining what ERP system, EPR system is, and organizations by WISPIC organizations, other resources like other webinars, reports, and a number of resources regarding EPR, an agenda with the next events, case studies that we're going to talk about, and they're going to be available over here. So I'm going to leave the link for you on our chat, and I'm going to send by email, communicating on our social media. But this site is already up, and it's going to be a meeting point for organizations regarding responsibility, that's extended producer responsibility. So I'm going to send the links to chat. So I believe that's it. Thank you all. I don't know if the speakers want to say goodbye or to give you contact information, but that's it. Thank you all. Thank you all who participated, and let's have the next.
Obrigada, Eduardo. Deixei o meu e-mail que alguém tinha pedido.
I left my email, which was over there,
Disposição para responder as perguntas.
and I'm available to answer questions.
Uma oportunidade não só de estar
So
compartilhando
I thank the responsibility of sharing all this.
aí outras opiniões e principalmente mais de perto, podendo ter
And
ouvido
hearing other opinions and all other things that are here. So thank you for allowing me to participate, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Obrigada mesmo a todos.
Thank you all.
Agradeço o convite aí do Eduardo, da Globalrec.
Thank you for the invite from Eduardo, all friends who participated, Jacqueline, Roberto. And I would like to thank all participants, and we are going to answer all your questions. Thank you. Also to thank everyone, to thank a Global Alliance of Waste Speakers, all waste speakers over here, supporters, participants, sponsors, all of them believing on the fight and history of waste speakers and recyclable material, who are so important for the environment, for the planet, to recover packages and to provide services. So we are counting on you. Thank you. And we are together with the ANCAT, Unicatadores, and all waste speaker actions. We are together. Thank you.
Tchau, pessoal. Obrigado. Até a próxima.
Okay, thank you. See you next time.
Logo, gente. Bom final de semana a todos.
have a very good weekend for everyone. Bye.